welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would make a video where I talk about my reading stats for 2020 and also look forward and talk about some of my reading goals for 2021. Despite everything else that went on in the world, 2020 was an amazing reading year for me because this is the year where I really got back into reading. And I've been so happy and grateful and excited about it. It was last year, during the summer in July, that I decided to get back into reading. Considering that this has been my first full year back into reading, I've done amazingly well. My reading goal on Goodreads for 2020 would be to read 12 books, because that's one book a month. Should be doable, right? Well, this year I've actually read 53 books. And it's still December, it's December 21st as of when I'm recording this, and I'm currently reading 2 books. I'm pretty sure it will end up being 55 books by the end of this year, which is crazy. That's more than a book a week. I was aiming for a book a month. But that's just completely insane. To even have reading stats, I didn't expect that either, because you need quite a lot of data in order to have stats and see relations between In that regard, it's been a great year. To track my reading, I've been using a reading log, which has been posted by Book Riot. I will link it down below if you're interested in it. So I've been using that to track my reading, and I will basically just be looking at that one and go through some of the stats and the charts that's already made available in that log. So first off, we have the number of pages. According to my Goodreads, as of now, with my only 53 finished books, although I think it will be 55, I read almost 20,000 pages. According to my reading log, it's more like 17,000 pages. And that is probably due to the fact that I've been listening to audiobooks this year, and Goodreads counts audiobooks as pages, but my reading log doesn't. Another interesting fact is, according to my reading log, I have spent 3,081 Swedish crowns on books I have read this year. Which is, it sounds like a lot when you think about it. If you divide it per month, it's about 250 Swedish crowns per month, and that's about 2 books. And I obviously read much more than 2 books a month. So in that way, it's quite okay. But of course I've been buying a bunch of books, so I've spent more money on books than those 3,000 crowns. But I mean, it's on my backlist for next year. So if we look at the stats, according to my reading log, my best reading month was August. Because in August I read a total of 10 books. 10 books in a month, that's crazy. That's probably due to the fact that I was on summer vacation. I didn't work, I didn't go to school. And also, I actually traveled. I went to Czech, visited my family when it was this short break between the 2 waves, managed to fit that in. And when you're on vacation, when you're on the plane and on the bus and stuff, you always read so much more than you do at home. What you also can see from that stat is that from January to June I really didn't read that much. My reading really picked up from July and onwards, and I do strongly think that that is due to the fact that I actually still went to school for the first half of this year. I still had school, I was working on my master thesis, I was catching up on courses, so I do think that's the reason why. Like you can see, I completed no books at all in May. That's when it was the most intense with my thesis. We can see that almost everything I read this year has been fiction. I think I read perhaps only 3 books that have been non-fiction. When it comes to format, 60% of my books have been printed, physical copies, 20% of them have been ebooks or digital copies, and 20% have been audiobooks. And this is also quite interesting because I do prefer a physical copy of a book. I don't mind ebooks because I do think that they're very convenient. It's nice to have one in my phone, just pick it up, read whenever I have the time. Usually it's cheaper. Audiobooks is the surprising one because until this summer, I had never listened to an audiobook before. I tried audiobooks, wasn't really the biggest fan, but then I started taking the car to work. I lost a lot of reading time because I usually read on the bus. So since I was taking the car, I can't really read and drive at the same time. So I started listening to audiobooks instead, and that has been great because it's been a way for me to still read and consume books, I guess, while driving. So that's quite cool. I still prefer printed books and ebooks to audiobooks, but it's just good to know that there's always an alternative for whatever mood you're in or whatever possibilities you have to reading. Next up is the audience for the books I read. 54.5% of the books I read this year have been targeted towards adult, and then we have a 32.7% have been targeted towards young adults, and the rest, which is about 13% have been for children. Nothing I really care about changing. I do know that I prefer YA and adult books compared to middle grade books. It makes sense. But then if you look on genres, my most read genre this year was fantasy. fantasy. No surprise really. I love me some fantasy and I want to get more into fantasy. So I don't expect this to change at all. But that's been 40% of the books I read have been in the fantasy genre. Then on second place we have general fiction, which is basically contemporaries. Completely fine with that being my second best category in this one. Makes sense. It's good with contemporaries. There's a lot of variety in here. A lot of literature and fiction goes into this category. And on third place we have romance, which is nice. I always love me a good romance. Fourth place is mystery and thriller or mystery and crime. And then on split fifth place we have classics and sci-fi. There's not really a lot here that I expect to change in the future. This is just the way I read. This is my preferred genres. It makes sense. I'm happy with it. And then if you just look at the page count for each book I read, most of the books have been in the range of 301 to 400 pages. I guess it makes sense. Don't really have that much to say about it. It's just fun stats to have a look at. We can look at the book source. The majority of the books I read this year have been purchased this year. This is the year I got back into reading. So this is the year I've been discovering books. I've gotten back into the joy of buying books. I've fallen back into that pit hole. Discovering books again, discovering different ways of reading, discovering genres and authors and just all of that. And I've been really getting into it. So basically this entire shelf was acquired this year along with so much more. I'm not mad about it. I got a job this year. I can pay for my things. It's fine. Following that, Scribd is my second most used book source, which is great. So Scribd is basically a huge library of ebooks and audiobooks which you get access to and you can read and listen to anything you like. I've been getting all of my audiobooks from Scribd. Most of my ebooks since I got Scribd I read on Scribd. For me it's worth it. It makes sense, especially when you consider what I paid for books this month. If I were to have actually bought the audiobooks and the ebooks that I've read as well, that would have been even more expensive. Star rating, I guess it's been quite a solid year in regards to ratings. I have not included my 2 DNFs in this reading log. I also do think that I'm quite nice, or I used to be quite nice with my ratings. I feel like I've gotten tougher these last like 3, 4, 5 months. If you check my Goodreads year in reading, my average rating for books is 3.7 stars, which I think is quite okay. Either that means that I'm really nice or just that I always read books I somewhat enjoy. Then we can look at the genre of the author. As we can see, a clear majority for reading books by female authors, which I think is really, really cool. I'm happy about this. I don't want to change this at all. I do think that this might change next year, considering that I want to get more into epic fantasy and classic fantasy, and those are typically written by men and male authors, so that might tip the scale more in their favor. I do still think that I will always lean more towards female authors. Then we have Nation of Origin. Now this is a really interesting one, and this is one I majorly want to work on next year. I have so many ambitions and goals and hopes for what I can do with this, and in the back of my head I have sort of a project plan for this. I have no idea how I will make it happen, but I would love for it to be a thing. It's very abstract right now. I'm working on it. As you can see, about 71% of the books I read have originated in the States. And then I have mostly UK books and then some from China, Korea. First of all, I find it just so difficult to actually pinpoint from where a book is originated, or like the author originates from. If I'm reading a book by an Asian American, do I classify them as Asian or American? You see what I mean? Like for me, I don't have a drop of Swedish blood in me, but I was born in Sweden. I would say that I'm Swedish. If I were a writer, would make me a Swedish writer. Yeah, do you see what I mean? I think it's very tricky. Either way, we can still see that most of the things I read stems from the States. And this is something I really, really want to change. And then we have also just some charts for the POC authors and queer authors, and also POC protagonists and queer protagonists. As we can see, white authors and also non-queer authors and or protagonists are the majority of these stats, and I just want to change it. I want to focus more on the POC and the queer authors and protagonists in the future. And I think that's about that for the charts. Now on to the goals. Let's just start with the big one. How many books do I wish and hope to read in 2021? In 2020 my goal was 12, and I exceeded that one by far with my approximately 55 books. So what can I do next year? I do think I can increase my Goodreads goal, and I've decided to have the goal of reading 52 books in 2021. That's one book a week, which I'm fairly sure I can do. Also, because I have already exceeded that, I have already read more than 52 books this year. I'm at 53 and 55 if you count my currently reading. Now some of the smaller goals. I want to read more non-fiction. As I said, I've read about, I think, 3 non-fiction books this year. I do think it's very important to read non-fiction. A lot of non-fiction books do interest me, but I just need to get on reading them. I don't have a number or a percentage of how much of my reading I wish to be non-fiction. I just know that I want to up those numbers and read more non-fiction next year. Speaking of just upping numbers, I want to read more books by POC and queer authors, and also books that features POC and queer characters. Once again, I don't have a certain percentage, I don't have a certain number. I'm partaking in some challenges that hopefully will help me achieve this goal. In general, I just think that it's very important for me to diversify my reading. That's always been a goal of mine. This is not really a goal, but I just want to mention it. I actually want to do some rereads next year, mainly because I have some video ideas that I really want to fulfill. I want to keep up with published books, and next year I want to read more books that have been published in that year. And this is for the sole reason that I want to be a good voter in the next Goodreads Choice Awards. I do think that if you're gonna vote in like a book choice awards, you should know the books that are in the categories, and you should have at least read a few of them. I want to be able to vote. I want to have an opinion and I want to express it. Another, like, not a goal, but kind of a goal, I guess, is why not keep the page count average over 400? I don't have a particular reason for this, it's just, it sounds good. It feels right. And then, as I talked about briefly, I do want to read more books that originates from different nations. This is a personal project that I will have. I want to do something creative with it. I want to make some sort of platform for this. I'm not too sure yet, but what I do know is that I, in general, want to focus on consuming, I guess, less media from the States and English-speaking countries. I'm not only talking about books. Other than books, I'm also thinking of movies, series, news, like everything. I feel like so much today, at least in Sweden, or the way I experience it, due to my own choice as well, of course, but so much surrounds and is about and originates from the States. Which is not bad, it's just the way it is. So many TV series and basically all the books that I read, and also the media and the news, especially this year with the presidential election in the States. And of course it's very important, but I also want to focus on other nations, because USA isn't the only country. Especially for someone who doesn't even live in the USA. I live in Europe. It's a different continent. I should know more about Europe, and I should read more literature from European countries, right? This is definitely something I feel quite passionate about. I want to read more books that are either taking place in new countries, and I want to read more books by authors that are not from English-speaking countries. Simple as that. And this might be a bit difficult due to the fact that many of the booktubers, probably most of the booktubers that I follow, are from English-speaking countries, and also Goodreads, which is probably the biggest platform on the internet for books and I guess book communities, is an American website owned by Amazon, I think, yeah. So of course the recommendations I will see and the hype I will see about books will most likely be a bit biased towards American authors and novels and books originated from the US. I will have to make my own effort to find these other types of books, but I'm honestly just so excited about it. While I'm on this note, I want to read more books by Swedish authors. I suck at this. For being a Swede, it's embarrassing how little I know about Swedish authors and Swedish literature, and I need to up my game with this. But unfortunately, my one attempt this year to read a book by a Swedish author ended up being a DNF because I just couldn't get through the book. It was so bad. I will probably be able to beat this year's though, like if I just complete one Swedish book next year. So much better already. Also, while I'm on this, I want to read a book in Czech. This might be very, very difficult. I do understand the language, but I can't really speak it, and I have difficulties with grammar and such. But I did take an evening course this last fall. I realized that the way it sounds is very similar to how it's written, and I do think that it would do me a lot of good if I actually try to read a book in Czech, because it's how I learned to read in English, right? I started reading books in English that I had already read. So the first book I ever read in English was Matilda by Roald Dahl, and I already knew the story and I had already read it, but in Swedish. So I kind of want to do the same thing here, but with Czech. The book I actually want to read in Czech is Twilight. Just some sort of like book I know I enjoy, that I know is not the most difficult, probably a YA book. The last main goal I have is that I want to step up my ARK game. I keep on requesting them from NetGalley and I never read them, so my ratio is at a big fat 0. I want to actually read the ARKs that I request and I want to do proper reviews for them, so just step it up, get a higher ratio than 0. That's the goal for next year. And that's about that for the main goals actually. Lastly, I just want to mention a few year-long challenges that I hope to do. The first one is Book Riot's Read Harder Challenge. Basically a challenge to encourage you to read more diverse. There's a total of 24 prompts, I will link it below. The second challenge that I will low-key participate in is Pop Sugar's Reading Challenge. I kinda did this in 2020. They also have a challenge with about 40 to 50 prompts. The way I low-key participate in this one is that I read the books not caring about this challenge, but once I've completed a book, I then go onto my list with the prompt and I just try to find to which prompt I can fit the book I have read. This year, although I have read 53 books, on my Pop Sugar challenge I have only completed 36 out of the 50 prompts, which is completely fine. I just think it's fun to try and match things up and not do it too seriously. Many goals and many challenges for next year. Maybe I'm a bit too ambitious, I'm not sure yet, time will tell. We still don't know what the situation will be next year. I have no clue where I will be next year. I'm really excited about next year. I'm so happy to be back into reading. I feel like I'm doing it with a passion that I didn't really have before and an interest, and I just want to keep exploring and discovering and learn. Those are like the main things, the main reasons for why I read. Thank you so much for watching this probably really long and rambly video. I hope that you're doing well. I wish you a good and happy holiday if you celebrate. I wish you good luck with the new year. Take care of yourself. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!
You gotta just go for it. Don't think about what comes after or what